Okay guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about cognitive load. So what do I mean by cognitive load? The definition of cognitive load is how much mental effort it takes to understand something and then make a decision. So in this video, I want to go over how that affects your marketing and your conversions overall. So I think a misunderstanding that we have is that people are just lazy and unmotivated, but really they're just overloaded. So there's a study that says that there's about that the average adult makes 35,000 decisions per day, and that is related to cognitive load and what we're going to kind of be going over in this video. So you probably heard the phrase like, I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed. This just means that somebody is overloaded cognitively, which means that they're going to make they're not in a decision making mood. They're probably just emptied out. Like I use the phrase like my brain is just fried. Like I just can't anymore. I just want to doom scroll on TikTok all day, like the rest of the day. So essentially, there's this theory called the cognitive load theory, and we're going to break it down into three parts. It's the intrinsic, the extraneous, and the germane. So the intrinsic is the complexity of new information. You want to keep this as simple as possible, which means just simplify your marketing. And we're going to go over specific ways how to do that. There's the extraneous cognitive load, which distracts working memory from processing new information. You want to reduce that. The extraneous is just how much extra brain power you need to process information, and usually this happens, and this is what really like fries your system, I guess, is when there's lack of information, when there's poor instructions. This is what kills your cognitive load. You just have to make too many decisions. Again, the 35,000 decisions, it's, where am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? How am I going to eat it? It's like all these micro decisions make up that 35,000 decisions per day. And in your marketing, you want people to, make a decision, make as little decisions as possible in order for you to convert them. And then the germane cognitive load is the deep processing of new information by integrating it with previous learning, which you want to maximize that because that helps people understand what you're selling, what you're marketing, and then they can easily make a decision. So again, the definition of cognitive load is how much mental effort it takes to understand something and then decide. So how are we going to reduce the cognitive load in your marketing? One thing I want to point out is that your marketing is competing with not just other competitors' marketing. Your marketing is competing with everything in the world. Your marketing is competing with messages. Your marketing is competing with every notification that someone gets on their phone. Your marketing is competing with that. Whether you have an ad on Meta or on TikTok, and then there's an email notification or there's a text message notification, you're competing with all of that. So you want to make sure once you have their attention and you want them to make a decision with you, you want to make it as quickly as possible. You want to just reduce the cognitive load, and you want to make sure that you increase the understanding of what is going on here so they can make a decision quickly. And you want them to say yes or no, because as a marketer, like I don't want to get too techie into it, but the more people can decide quickly yes or no whether they want what you're selling, the algorithm helps you find more people that say yes. So if there's just absolute confusion to what you're selling, what's going on your landing page, what even is your brand or anything like that, you are just lighting money on fire at that point. So just keep that in mind, that you're not only competing with competitors, you're competing with everything else in the world. So kind of like a base here for landing pages, ads, emails, and content. The one thing you want to keep in mind is that you want to decrease the quantity of communication and you want to increase the quality of communication. So what do I mean by that? You can probably tell that there's a shift in kind of like the funnel world, the marketing, landing pages. Everything is getting shorter and shorter and shorter because you want to increase the quantity of communication. Decrease the quantity of communication and increase the quality. So this kind of, in my mind, I think of when I'm writing copy or whether I'm building a landing page, I just want to keep it as simple as possible. So again, if you have a long landing page and it takes someone to get to the bottom to understand how much a ticket costs, how much, where do I put my email, that is super confusing, and they probably won't even get to the bottom of your page to see that, for example. So one thing I would recommend is use a heat mapping tool like Hotjar, and that's going to help you see how much content people are consuming and then start whittling down your pages, your emails, ads, everything. So just keep that in mind. So that's what I mean by increasing the quality of the communication. If you have a good headline, a clear call to action with a big freaking button, that is pretty much all you need these days. You don't need to litter your page with testimonials. If you can just, clearly state the outcome of what is going on the page, then you're golden. You're probably doing better than a lot of other marketers out there. So there's one law. It's called the Hick's law. I'm not going to go into the whole scientific definition here, but essentially, the more choices people have, the slower the decision they make. The fewer options, the faster action. And one other study to solidify this is the Iyengar and Lepper study. So in that study, what they did is they sold flavors of jam. That was a company. They sold jam. And what they did is they had kind of like a pop-up kiosk at a supermarket. And the first time they ran it, they had 24 different flavors of jam. So whatever flavors they had, they were selling it, and more people were interested. They stopped, they sampled more flavors, but less people bought. Versus when they had the 6 flavors, more people purchased, and it wasn't really about stopping people, stopping anybody and everybody, because they had this grand display of 24 flavors of jam. Like, wow. So that's what you want to think about in your marketing. Think about your marketing as a jar of jam, like literally as simple as that. Because what is in a jar of jam? You have, it's probably this big. You've got the flavor name. You probably got the ingredients, and you've probably got a nice decorated jam. Now there's all this about product packaging. You want to make it look as beautiful as possible. So think about everything in your marketing as a jar of jam. Literally, there's company, I think it's called David protein bars, where they have, it just says David, it's a protein bar, and then it lists the couple of ingredients that's in it: chocolate, salt, whatever is in the bar. So I can look at the bar and I can quickly make a decision whether I want this or not. I can quickly see what's in it, versus if I were to get a super heavily processed protein bar and it has all these ingredients, I spend way more time reading it and thinking, yes, I want that ingredient, no, I want that ingredient, yes, no, yes, no. I spent so many decisions thinking whether I should get that protein bar or not. So that's kind of like the example. So when you're producing any form of marketing, just think about it as a jar of jam. Your marketing is a jar of jam in a supermarket, and you're competing with a bunch of other jars of jam, different flavors, different companies, different brands, different types, but you want to keep it as simple as possible to get people to say yes or no. The no is not bad, because in the world of advertising and technology, the algorithm is going to help you find more of the people that say yes. So again, as a rule of thumb, when you're marketing, selling anything online, one page, one decision. Again, if you're doing e-commerce and you're actually selling jam, maybe you're watching this video and you're selling jam, one page, one decision. Just keep it as simple as possible. And then a quick bonus is use the platforms that people already kind of inherently use. So I'm not sure if you guys are already aware of this, but people are using Google Docs as funnel builders, because Google Docs is what's widely used throughout corporate world, especially if you're selling to B2B. I've seen offers just being listed in a Google Doc. You can't add fancy design to Google Doc, but Google Doc is easily readable. You can just highlight things, you can underline things, you can bold things. Simple enough. It's on one page. So you can make it as literal as possible when you're creating landing pages and marketing, where you keep it as super simple. But again, I just want you to keep that example in mind of using the platform somebody already uses in order to make a decision. I know for me, in corporate world, I use a lot of Google Docs. So if I see an offer on Google Doc and it says click here to submit a form, I'm probably going to do that, because I see that every single day on multiple occasions. Versus if I see this very long landing page trying to sell me something that I actually need, I won't even get to making the final decision. I'll just be like, all right, this is too much for me. Done. So just keep that in mind, and don't rely on funnel builders alone. Again, going back to Google Docs example, just try out exactly what people are already using. Just be on the same platform, and don't rely on building one funnel, make it extremely beautiful, and just spending a bunch of time on that. You want to just optimize for conversions and reduce as much cognitive load as possible. And again, just when in doubt, just use the KISS method from The Office, which is keep it simple, stupid. I know I need to remind myself of this every single day, every time I'm creating a funnel, a landing page. Just keep it simple, even if it's just white background, plain text, nothing on it. I would start there before trying to spend all this time with a graphic designer, with trying to spend all this time building a funnel you don't even know converts, or building marketing that you don't even know converts when you haven't even started simply. So again, this is what the cognitive load is. I will link to some of the studies in the YouTube description here, so you guys can just take a look, dive a little bit deeper into this topic. You can go into this whole rabbit hole for cognitive load. It's super interesting. But I just wanted to present some of this information, and how it affects your marketing, and how I'm thinking about it when I'm building any marketing, specifically landing pages, emails, ads, writing copy. So that is essentially what the cognitive load is. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and thank you for watching.